Underway, and we will be firing on all cylinders. My apologies for being a little bit late today. It's just different software. Zoom did some strange things this week, and it wasn't really helpful the way they did it. Let's go get everything set up over on Zoom right now. Any moment now. Launching my video, and off we go. Welcome. I'm Dante St. James. Today we're going to have a look at the networking confidently in 3 steps. So we want to give you the opportunity to find ways of networking that will work for you, particularly for those who are a little bit nervous about networking and are not really sure that they feel confident in doing it. So I'll get that screen shared for you right now, and we'll get it underway. So first up, what we want to do is initiate conversations. And we do that mostly through the idea of starting with a piece of very authentic and very genuine and very real curiosity. And by curiosity, I mean there's no point going in and faking that you're interested in people. You kind of really have to be interested in people. You have to have some degree of interest in people that makes sense. So what we're going to do is just initiate conversations in a way that feels natural to you and sets the stage, I guess, for that very first meaningful connection you're going to make at a networking event. So networking doesn't have to be awkward. It doesn't have to be, but we're going to explore on how to sort of do that strongly. And we start with genuine curiosity. You want to know something about what people do. Now you may go in going, I need to get business out of this. Just understand that making business, your customer is probably not in that room, but the people in that room will know who your customer is. So think about it that way. You're not meeting your customer, you're meeting the people who know your customers. So what you want to do is, introduce and share your story briefly. And that by I mean is having some kind of mechanism. We use the elevator pitch quite honestly, as a way of making that very brief and very concise. And then you ask really engaging questions. When you first meet someone, those first few seconds are quite crucial. They're the thing that really gets you, in someone's very first frame of reference. And this, I guess, determines a foundation for that relationship you're building. And every time you go to a networking event, you are building a relationship. So when you first meet someone, yes, the first few seconds are rather crucial. That's why you're going to have some kind of, a genuine smile, some real contact, a friendly demeanor. If you're really in a bad mood, do not go to a networking function. Just don't do it. Just make sure you're in that mood to meet people, to talk, to interact with people, because this initial interaction lays the groundwork for all the trust that will build. And that trust is what is based on either them being your customer or referring someone to you that will be your customer. It lays that groundwork and it encourages the other person to open up as well. So that is how you're setting the foundation for the relationship, is by basically open the door for trust. Now, when it comes to overcoming initial awkwardness, that curiosity thing is what helps. So the idea of breaking the ice can be pretty daunting, to be honest. But remember that people love talking about themselves. So by showing some genuine curiosity in people, you're also allowing them to come forward, because they're probably feeling as awkward as you are, because it's an awkward, unnatural environment, right? So what we want to do is create that genuine curiosity by asking open-ended questions, not questions that have a yes or no answer. So you won't be asking, the weather's been really bad today, hasn't it? And you go, yeah. Where do you go from there? There's nowhere to go from there. What you will ask instead is something like, what do you reckon about the weather lately? And that prompts them to come back and answer with something other than yes or no. That's where the awkwardness lies, is where you ask a really obvious question and you get back an obvious response. So you ask a simple question, you get a simple response back. What we want to do is open up conversation. We do that by asking an open-ended question. No yeses and no answers, something which inspires a response. Now, I don't want you to go down a sales path with this and go, if there's one thing you could change in your business, what would it be? Because you just know that that's a coach just looking to coach you, right? So keep it general at this stage. You don't need to go into super specifics, specifically those around what your business offers. That's a lot later on. You're not at the trust level yet. Now you need to focus on listening rather than worrying about the next thing you're going to say. I think we all know people like this. The kind of person who is only quiet because they're waiting for you to shut up so they can say the next thing, not really listening to what you're saying. And this is where I've got a little tool I use when I find myself going into shut up so I can say something mode, which is generally that I repeat in my head as they're talking, this person has something to say, this person has something to say, or I'll repeat their name in my head, which does two things: helps me remember their name, but also draws my focus onto them, which then naturally gets me listening to them. And I don't have to do that in a talk. It usually takes 5 seconds and I'm in that mode to hear them. And this is what helps you establish that real connection right off the bat. And active listening, I talk about this all the time. It's where you're not just looking at someone, you're nodding, letting them know that you're listening. That can be really powerful because you seem like you're an authentic and very empathetic person when you show response to what they're saying. So, I mentioned very briefly this idea of an elevator pitch, and this is a very condensed version of the elevator pitch, which is all about who I am, what I do, and why it matters. So there's many other variations on the elevator pitch, and I like this one because it just brings it down to the main points, right? So having a short, clear introduction or an elevator pitch, it helps you communicate exactly what's on screen, who you are, why you do it, what you do. And if you keep it simple and authentic, it's very easy to remember. And the key to keeping things rememberable is to keep them simple, right? The simpler it is, the simpler it is to remember. And if it's simple to remember, then someone can refer that onto someone they know. Remember, the customer is not in the room there, but the people who know your customer, they are in the room. So when it's done right, this intro, this elevator pitch, can then prompt people to ask more questions about what it is you do, and they keep that conversation going. So if you say, "My name is Dante St. James. I'm the founding, the founder of Speak Starter, which means that I do pretty much everything, and my work matters, I guess, because it inspires confidence in people. It helps people to feel more confident, to take up more space in life, so they can get their message across, and they can also be in a position to influence for the greater good." And they'll go, "Wow, that sounds really cool. So what exactly is it you do?" "Oh, it's a public speaking organization." "Yeah, you've ever heard of Toastmasters?" They go, "Oh yeah, I have, yeah." So, "Well, it's nothing like that." And then they might laugh, and that gives you room to add that little bit of personality into it. Whatever it is you do, there's somebody who will find it interesting. Trust me. Now, when it's choosing the right context is important because you've got to figure out something that works for where you are. If you're in someone's living room at a dinner party in a private home, it's a very different context than at a bar where there's professional networking going on between accountants, right? If you're at a conference, what you may want to open with in a conversation is something about one of the speakers or one of the sessions or something that you learned. If you're at a social event, then commenting on the environment around you. "Wow, they've really done this place up," or "Geez, the lighting in here is amazing. I wish I had this in my lounge room." Or you might actually refer to a mutual friend who introduced you, and you talk about how you both know that person. Bridging your small talk into their meaningful topics is a lot easier when you have this common starting point. And this is where we go wrong with small talk. We think it comes from nowhere and that it's unnecessary. But small talk is a valuable piece of our culture that allows us to find something in common so that we can like someone. And when we like them, we're a lot closer to trusting them, whether it's to do business with or to refer business to. Now, that's the topics, but how do you know if somebody is welcoming to the idea of being spoken to in the first place? And it generally comes down to an approachable body language. Someone with their arms crossed, looking very angry, is probably not the person you want to go and see, because your body language, it speaks when your mouth's closed, really. So if you turn your body to face a person, it shows you're engaged and have some kind of relaxed posture that shows a bit of confidence, and things like nodding and showing you're listening and interested. Remember that active listening I was talking about? These tiny little cues, they build this immediate rapport. Your expression of empathy and understanding opens up their empathy and understanding. And then there's this like magical little thing that happens that you get each other, right? You know, "Oh, this is a safe person that I can approach and talk to. They're welcoming me. I'm welcoming them. Great. Let's have a conversation." And when that occurs, it's so much easier to have that. So open hands, genuine smile. Eye contact, you got to be really careful with, because some cultures eye contact is actually quite aggressive. So what I would do is go with what you see is in what that person's doing. So if somebody has all the hallmarks of being friendly and talkative, but they're not really someone who looks in the eye, that could be a cultural thing, not necessarily a passive thing or an unfriendly thing. Particularly with some Indigenous folks, that is a very aggressive thing to look someone in the eye, particularly if they're a person of the opposite sex or if they're even a person of the same sex. So just be aware of the culture you're in and the context you're in, and do a bit of research first to see what may be appropriate. If you're going to a cultural event of a particular group of people, learn what their cultural protocols are, because trust me, if you do learn that, learn one or two words from that language, it goes so far to help you to feel like you're part of their family and they will welcome you into their circle as well. So, initiating great conversations then is also about being genuine. We get that. Leading with curiosity, we've covered that, and then sharing who you are in that really concise way. So, to wrap up this section, I'd say keep your body language open. Use the context around you to draw points of conversation and also to guide those early small talk conversations you're having. And then you're in a much better position to move on to this next step, which is where we'll talk about deepening that connection. And this is where we're talking about building rapport, right? Once you've initiated the conversation, how do you move past the small talk to get into some real kind of connection here? So this step focuses on building authentic rapport that can really lead to that lasting professional and personal relationship that you're there to achieve essentially. You might be there to achieve sales, I know, but I'll say it again, your customer's probably not in there, right? So we do that through connecting, finding that meaningful common ground in that first stage of small talk. We listen, we show genuine interest. That opens up the conversation to more. And then we engage with people by responding thoughtfully. So that's not by going, yes, oh, okay, cool. Cool is that a conversation killer. Just get that word out of your vocabulary. Anything like cool or oh, okay, that sort of stuff closes down a conversation and it shows that you just really don't care about connecting with anyone at all. So, how do we do this active listening I was talking about? Well, to show somebody you truly value the words that are coming out of their mouth, you do this active listening thing. And this is not just the nodding and smiling, it's also repeating back to them what they just said in another way. So if they say, I've been working with the Commonwealth Bank for 32 years and it's been a long journey, but I feel like it's my home, it's my family. You go, 32 years at the CBA. Wow. You must really feel like you're part of it, like that it's part of you. You've essentially said the same thing back to them, which encourages them to continue and go deeper down that path because they felt heard. They've actually just not just felt heard, they just heard that they were heard. So by paraphrasing what they said and then asking maybe some meaningful follow-up questions, so I could add on to that, has there been other team members that have been around for as long as you? And they go, oh, wow, there'd be probably about three of us, I reckon, were around in the beginning. And that helps you to acknowledge the emotion that comes with what they just told you. If it's something that's about their work and their career, remember, a third of their life is spent at work. So they're going to feel some emotions around that, right? This level of listening helps people feel seen and heard. And that is such a powerful way to build a real rapport with someone. The finding a common ground then comes where you explore things like shared interests. So you might hear them say something about going fishing on the weekend. You go, gosh, I haven't been fishing in so long. I think the first fish I ever caught was a flathead and it was tiny. I had to throw it back. There's no way it was going to feed anyone for dinner. And they're like, oh, mate, you should see this barra that I caught the other time when I was up in the Northern Territory. And then this becomes a common interest. Or it doesn't have to be as blokey as that, as fishing and camping and four-wheel driving and hunting and going to BCF on the weekend or Bunnings on the weekend. It can be anything you like. So if you've got a passion for animals or for volunteering or for coaching your daughter's ballet school, all that stuff it's someone's going to have some kind of thing they can relate to. What we're looking for when we're in these small talk conversations is something, anything that we can grab hold of that draws us together. So when you identify that shared interest or maybe a common challenge, it could be a challenge, oh gosh, three kids trying to get them in the car before I got here and get them off to their grandmother's. Oh my God, kids, right? And they go, oh yeah, no, mine are the same. It's just like it's a major operation every time we got to get one of them into the car. That sort of stuff creates a bond. And even if you're interests aren't exactly the same, empathizing with their experiences, it kind of forges this position of mutual understanding. You get them, they get you, even if your life experiences aren't exactly the same. Now, the next step as you start to deepen that relationship is what we call adding value. And this is where you're offering some help or resources that might be there for them. You say, oh, look, and going down the path of the kids' conversations, going, I actually read this book the other day by a guy called Steve Biddulph. It's called Raising Boys. And it just really brought to life the difference it is from raising my daughter, what it is raising my son. Completely different rule book there. Like you got boys, girls? Oh, you got 2 boys. Oh, read this book, definitely. In fact, I'll lend it to you. Just, give me a business card so I can email you to get a place to send it to. You've got a rapport. You've also got a follow-up because that person's got to return that book to you, right? You can go and suggest connections between people, showing them there's someone who you think, oh, that could be someone who's really useful for them. Or you can provide feedback if they're asking for things like, look, I'm just trying out this new combination of shirt and tie. What do you reckon? And you give them feedback. Now, the feedback doesn't have to be around that. It could be around the workplace they have. But the idea would be don't offer feedback unless people ask for it. Um, that's kind of an unwritten rule, but I would make that a written rule, right? If someone asks for feedback and say, look, I'm actually testing out this new handshake, or I'm testing out, I run this place and I'm testing out a new cocktail. What do you think of it? They're asking for that feedback, give it to them, but don't start giving people feedback, particularly on what you think of their workplace because you had a bad experience there 15 years ago. That's not what this is about. It's about feedback that's been asked for. Might be a case of, oh, I've been working with Australia Post for 25 years. Or I think everyone's had a bad experience with them. And you go, oh, yeah, I had a bit of a problem with them 3 years ago, but nothing that bad. And they go, oh, what was the problem you had? And then you've been invited to give that feedback. Storytelling is a bit of a hard one because how much of a story do you tell? I would say your stories have to be number one, relevant to the context you're in. This is a networking event, not Alcoholics Anonymous. So telling your story about overcoming alcoholism or learning how to ride a bike when you're a little kid and then you fell over and cried and everyone laughed at you. That's not what we're looking for here. It's relevant to the environment you're in. If you're in an energy extractors conference, then you're going to talk about energy extraction. If you're in a mindset coaching seminar and you've come out to have the drinks break, then what you're going to talk about is breakthroughs and mindsets, right? So be relevant to where you are and keep that story short. There is nothing worse than being caught with somebody you don't know and they are telling their entire life story that you never asked to hear. Don't be that person, right? Keep the story really concise. Basically, yeah, about 15 years ago, this happened. Look, I've moved on from it now, but yeah, it certainly got to me. But I don't like to go too deeply into it, but it happened. That's telling a life story. It doesn't have to be something which takes half an hour to get through. Because trust me, they're fighting to get away from you at that point. And then maybe highlight a key lesson. So in your story, it'll be, is it relevant to the environment? Have I kept it short? And what at the end of that story that I'm telling is a life lesson? And that life lesson could be, you never know how strong you are until you have no choice but to be strong. It could be something as common as banal as that, but that's the story that's yours. That's the story you're telling. So that's a really brief look at storytelling. The handling of small talk in a skillful way, I guess, is understanding first that small talk's not bad. It's the gateway to something more meaningful. It's where it starts. So if you sense the other person is ready, you can gently steer the conversation to something more deep or personal. A little bit of fun can go a long way. You can go, oh gosh, the other day I thought I was going to be really smart, lean back in my chair and look like a real boss. I ended up falling backwards and actually hurt my back. Not funny at all, but goes to show you just when you're trying to be the hero, you end up being zero. A little bit of humor like that is relatable. And I would usually find that, go light on the humor. Usually point the humor at yourself, not at someone else. Unless they're a celebrity, it's open season on them. Celebrity and sports stars, open season. But make it about yourself. Make it about your own failures. There's something very endearing about that. As long as you don't get and go, and it got worse, and it got worse, and it got worse, and it becomes that 30-minute life story. It's not where we want to go. And to respect people's personal comfort zones. One of the big things today, like I met someone who I've been doing some work with recently, and I said, "Are we hugging?" And she said, "Oh yeah, of course we are. We're Darwin people." So I that was me wanting to test her boundaries. Say, do you want to hug? I'm not going to hug you without permission. And she rated exactly what it was, which was me asking for permission. And she was like, yeah, absolutely. I'm a huggy person. I got the feeling she was because she stood up and stepped towards me as I came to the table. So I tested that boundary, and that's how you work it. I know that feels like it's painful trying to work out things, and it's awkward, and oh, what if I get it wrong? Look, you'll get it wrong. That's life. Sometimes you get things wrong. You move on and you keep going. Oh, but I'd never be able to survive if I did the wrong thing. Yes, you will. You won't die just because you make a mistake. This is not brain surgery you're doing here, it's networking. So let's summarize what we do in step two. We listen actively, we find some shared ground between people, and we're always seeking ways to sort of add a bit of value to their lives, whether it's through a story, a lesson that comes through our story, feedback if it's asked for. Now we want to talk about step three, because this is where we discuss how to nurture and maintain those newfound connections we're making. Because even the best initial conversations, they don't go anywhere if you don't follow up. You need to maintain these new relationships. Like when you're getting first in a relationship with someone, you have to date, you have to meet up, you have to nurture it. All the same here, you have to nurture this stuff. So what we want to do is find a way to adequately follow up. And that starts with some kind of follow up in 48 hours. You've got 2 days in which to carry it on to the next level. Bit like a date, right? You go on a great date, we tend to follow up the same night. As soon as we go home, wow, that was amazing. Can't wait to see you again. If you get ignored, well, then it's time to move on, because obviously they don't feel the same. In this case, 48 hours is really good. 24 to 48 hours is great because it gives time for them to get back into their real life and understand whether having some kind of ongoing relationship with you is worth their time, if that's something they really want. By the time you reach out, and I would say always be the person who reaches out rather than the one who gets reached out to, because it puts you in a position where you, as the person who's going with a level of confidence, you're the person, not, it's not a powerful position, but as the initiator, you make it easy for other people to respond to you. You will be surprised the amount of times you get a response from them saying, "Oh, I was going to send you an email," and they didn't, and you know they wouldn't have because they were shy and they thought, "Oh, what are they going to think if I send an email?" That everyone's waiting for someone else to initiate that conversation, so do it. Send the email. Make it personalized. Reference the conversation you had with them. That's because you want to sort of draw it back to the memory they had of meeting you, and whether the pleasant conversation you had, or the interesting or the challenging conversation you had, because you want to get them back in that zone, right? They'll remember that and go, oh yeah, that's right, that was really cool. Hey, we should grab a beer sometime, or we should grab a coffee sometime. And then have some kind of clear next step of where to go. So suggest something as a follow-up. The follow-up could be, hey, do you want to have a call soon, or maybe grab a coffee? Because what we're talking about, I actually want to ask you a few questions about that. And then you know that they will probably say yes. They'll go, oh, look, really not for me. I didn't really enjoy the networking event. I kind of feel a bit burned out from it. I'm just going to have a bit of time for myself this weekend. And you go, okay, you know what? They're not interested. That's great. That's fine. That's data. Move on to the next bit. Having that timely follow up within 24 hours allows you to very easily slip back into their relevance, because as you get to a week, you start to it becomes harder to reference those conversation points because you probably don't remember them to start with. After 1 week too, they start to kind of forget you too. And it may be that even after a week, they won't bother responding to that email because it's become irrelevant to them. It really stays relevant within the 24 hours and starts to lose relevance for their time pretty quickly. So make it personal. Make sure you do it quickly, because it starts to become irrelevant to them very quickly. We do wanna make it personal though. Mention shared interest in that follow-up. Remind them of what you talked about, what goals you shared, or any resource you might have said, "Oh, I need to send you that book from Steve Biddulph," and you go, "This is the place where you go, hey, the book I was talking to you about, where should I send it over to?" It also gives you like offering to share a book is a great way of getting a coffee date. And a great way to get a follow up. You know, they might go, "Oh, look, I'm not really available this week. Oh, we could try it next Tuesday." And then you go, "Okay, great. We're going to have that catch up." And the whole point of the catch up is to figure out how you can help each other, how you can help them. And you got to go with a sense of service because a lot of people, they don't know quite what to do as a follow up. So think about things like coffee chats, a chat over Zoom on a virtual meeting, an in person catch out of a cafe is always good. Public places are always good because people feel safe in a public place. It could be another industry event. So, hey, are you going to the Biological Farming Society conference next week? They go, yeah, I am. Oh, I'll meet you there. How about like 2 o'clock before the plenary session? I'll meet you by the left hand doors, and you go, yeah, great. We meet each other there. Or it could be on a webinar that you're part of, or some kind of group call that you're part of. Any of those things are really helpful. You could collaborate on something. So today's follow up was from a networking session. So the meeting I just came from today was a follow up on a public speaking training session with which I sort of put an idea out to the attendees, and this person responded by following up the next day. And the following up the next day came then from me going, let's schedule a time. Now we've scheduled that time and done that. We are now collaborating on a joint project together. So that could be a way. Now that's fairly advanced. We were very much on the same page from the moment we met. I know her background, her experience, and what she's able to do. So it's not really a great risk for me to go for that. It's fun. It's a good way. So we went from an email to a coffee chat, which was today, and now we're going into collaboration. So you don't really, like, I wouldn't expect you to jump straight into collaboration after just one follow up email, right? The way to make sure you do these follow-ups is to keep some kind of contact log. So, for instance, you might have a customer relationship management system. You might have, I don't know, a bunch of sticky notes on a wall. You could have an AI tool that transcribes all your conversations or whatever you're using. But keep a simple contact log. You know, think about the people. This is where business cards do come in handy because I line them up on my desk when I get back the next day and I go, okay, these are the people I need to follow up with. And those cards will stare at me all week until I followed up on each one of them. So it's a very motivating thing. That's why I still like business cards because bumping phones and getting a contact downloaded into my phone. I've got over 3,000 contacts in my phone. I'm not going to remember who the person is that bumped phones with me. I'm going to look for their name, forget their name, and go, oh my God, who was that person? I won't be able to find it. Whereas a business card, it's in my pocket. It goes straight onto my desk the next morning. I've got a process for it. So that could be good. And make sure you update your log. If you've got a customer relationship management system, you can update it with fresh information as it comes through from that person. Now, the really advanced stuff is where you're creating mutual opportunities. Like, so the genuine relationship is not a one-way thing. It's got to have some value for both people. So this is where you can consider, like the woman today that I met up with, collaborating on a small project together. So we're doing a small workshop we're going to do together. Or it could be sharing a lead. You go, oh my goodness, I just got someone who totally needs what it is you do. Can I make the connection? So it's usually a Facebook connection or usually a LinkedIn connection, really. Or it could be an email, like an email saying, hey, please let me introduce blah, blah, blah to you. Be an introducer, be a lead sharer. Don't hoard your contacts. Just share it around, right? Or introduce people to people in your network just because you think they would get on well. Probably have a point to it though, rather than just, hey, you two would get on well, because that means that the moment they meet, it's going to be really super awkward, like this three-way handshake that's going on here. I don't know, AI images, right? So following up is where people drop the ball, right? But when you're consistent, you're personal, and you're always seeking to create that mutual shared value with someone, you turn these one-off meetings into these really potentially lasting professional relationships. So that's our three steps, really. Initiate the conversations, build the rapport, follow up and nurture. That's not really rocket science, this. It's something you can do quite easily. So as we wrap up, Thank you for joining this. I hope the tips really helped you to feel a bit more at ease and a bit more authentic about networking. Whilst it's a framework and I gave you very specific things to try and do and say, it's going to come down to you turning it into what your thing is. But I reckon, start strong by genuinely connecting, staying consistent with your follow-ups. This is the kind of thing that could really work for you. If you want to follow up at any of these things, speakstarter.com.au is where I do my public speaking training stuff. And of course, this today is brought to you by darwininnovationhub.com.au, where I do a lot of the work that I do with people. So that's your chance, I guess, to really lift your networking game, take it to a whole new level, take it to a place where you're not going to have a great deal of issues with connecting with people. Have a place where you can connect much more clearly, and you'll find networking is actually a really pleasant thing to do. Thank you for joining me. Have a great week, and I'll see you on the next webinar.